Okay, so welcome to the June event for the Contact Center Network. So today's agenda, we've got a little bit of introductions and networking. So I've already mentioned where the chat button is. If you've not found it yet, dig it out and start introducing who you are and drop any useful links into the chat. We've got the guest speakers who I've already introduced, which is Nick, Eileen and Sonny in that order. And we'll be going through some useful dates for your diary at the end of this session as well, for the next session and some other useful webinars that are coming up. So I set the Contact Center Network up in, was it March, maybe April this year, in light of kind of everybody being locked down. I thought it'd be great to kind of pull together something that joins people from the contact center industry up, so we've got a good sense of community. And there are lots of other contact center networks out there that you can pay for, that are part of a membership, but I thought actually people need a bit of free at the moment and they need a bit of value. So why not set this up? And for those that don't know me, I am Gary Gormley. I run a business called Forensic About Business Solutions. That's Fab Solutions to everybody on here because we're all friends. And I set my business up just over 18 months ago now. Is it 18 months ago? Feels like a lifetime ago. And the main premise for me is to help contact centers optimize their customer experience. And I do that in one of three ways: looking at process, people, and leadership. And I've worked in the contact center industry for about 16 years. So there's probably not many things that I haven't done or experienced or done badly and learnt from that I can share with people in the contact center community. So I work with anybody in the contact center space, really. And what I love about contact centers is it's just there's lots and lots of things for you to think about in the contact center environment, and it makes it a really fun and engaging place to work. So that's why I kind of do what I do, and I kind of really enjoy working with people to help them look at how they can make their processes a little bit better. So I thought, as part of this, what better way to kind of set up a networking event that is specific to the contact center industry and brings to the kind of the value add, if you like, of what some of the things that are typically impacting us in the contact center community. We've had ones here in the past where we've looked at workforce management, we've looked at quality assurance, we've looked at change. We've got ones coming up where we're going to be looking at the voice of the customer and technology. And today's theme, which I've tried to kind of be all encompassing, is around employee engagement and employee well-being. And I chose this because it's a very, very topical point at the moment. People are going to be coming back to contact centers. There's stats out there that show around 65% of people are really anxious about coming back into the work environment, and that's understandably so. So I thought, let's hear from some people that are specialists in this industry to hopefully share some hints and tips about how we can help support our teams and support ourselves in kind of making that journey back into the contact center. So I'm not going to prattle on anymore. I'm not going to give you a sales pitch. What I would please encourage is, if you are on this call today, it's not about selling your wares. So if you're in the chat, feel free to promote what you do, but please don't hound people and don't use it as a platform to sell. So without further ado, I will hand over to Nick Elston. I'll stop sharing, Nick, and I'll let you take the floor. I'll let you take stuff on you.
Cheers, Gary. Thank you very much. Hey, everyone. Nice to meet you. So I'm the only guy to come out with less hair with lockdown than coming in. So if you didn't recognise me from the picture, the cap's gone. So we're all making this stuff up as we go along, aren't we? So my name is Nick Elston. I'm an inspirational speaker on the lived experience of mental health. Of that long handle, the lived experience part is the most important part. Why? Because for me, lived experience is the vehicle that takes organisations and individuals from the problem of mental health to the solution, but it's not the solution. It's a really weird position. I don't sell solutions, I sell engagement in solutions. So what does that actually look like? Well, it means that I don't talk about what anxiety is. I talk about what anxiety does. So how it keeps us in our comfort zones, how it stops us living a life on our terms, how it can affect the relationships you choose, even the ones you choose to stay in. It could be the decisions you take, the opportunities you don't go for. Anxiety can really be attributed for a lot more than we believe. So for me, I'm kind of bridge the gap between mental health and personal development. And that's kind of how I work with contact centers. And I'll give you an overview on that right at the end. But for me, just very, very simple. I'm not a details guy. I just want to tell you a little story. And it's a little story about why I do what I do. I had a childhood of mental illness. I had obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, which is actually quite commonly known as a term, but less common than GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, which is what mine morphed into. The solutions and the awareness weren't as high back in the day. So it morphed into something called GAD. Now, statistically, that's more common, but less commonly known. Some of the signs of that in adult life could be that you are on that hamster wheel of anxiety, and as soon as you stop being anxious about one thing, something else jumps on. It could be that you constantly put your accountability, your value, and your worth in the hands of other people, and you have no ownership over your own kind of confidence. It could be that you replay conversations and events that have not gone your way, and you'll get a guilty feeling about it, and you keep replaying it in your head over and over again. As a speaker about this stuff, I've tried to say things that people don't tend to say because of the angle that I come at. And one of those things is the fact that the same energy it takes to destroy us is the same energy that it takes to be a catalyst to go forward. And into education, I was head prefect, top grades. I was in every clique because my way of coping with that was people pleasing. Very, very easy, very, very simple mechanism. But interestingly, from the outside, labelled as he's sensitive or he's a worrier. And actually, they're quite kind and respectful terms, really. But it masked something that was going on with me, that I was running on high anxiety. Interestingly, as an aside, I can trace my 3 biggest challenges in adult life back to childhood, namely anxiety. It's a learned behaviour. My family has a history of high anxiety, not done with any cruel intent. I've got a loving family. But it's a learned behavior. The second thing is that it's all about weight loss and weight. That in between feeding me rounds of food, that my grandparents would say, he's a big lad, he loves his food. I am a big lad, I love my food. A bit of brand on it now, so I'm kind of screwed. But the point is, I associate that with good stuff in my life. And the third thing is I've actually got a very bad relationship with alcohol. Now, that I didn't realise until I stopped in March last year. And I stopped because I was taken into hospital, and the doctor said, Mr. Elson, you've got a big heart. I said, thank you very much. He said, no, it's not a good thing. I went, okay, cool. But the medication he put me on actually meant that I had to stop drinking. And it was only when I stopped drinking that I found that my behaviour has changed, and people were commenting on how better I was. And so for me, it's interesting, those things that we can carry. And it kind of really kicks on to what I'm going to say next about our masking behaviour. So I took the same survival mechanism from education into my corporate life. And this is what I see in so many people now, whether they're clients or audiences, that the reason why people get to those points of burnout or meltdown or breakdown or whatever you want to call it, because a lot of the time people don't even realize they've been there, that they mask how they feel, that we will kind of try and be what people want to see in us. We will try and be what situations demand of us, but we sure don't damn show ourselves. Because when we show ourselves, we feel we're going to get shot at. We feel we're not going to be loved and judged and everything else that runs through our head. And the second element of this is the fact that we don't schedule recovery. And what I mean by that is we'll fill up our diaries with our work stuff, fill the rest of the diary up with our family commitments, and we don't feature in our own lives. Every single day where there should be a piece of our diary which is aligned to us to recharge and recover and go again. It's a really overused adage, but that airplane thing of putting your oxygen mask on first to help other people really, really does apply. And you can only run for so long until you stop. And I stopped 7 years ago. I've been to a business networking meeting. For those who have never been, it's where you go along, pretend to be happy, sell your stuff, and eat some breakfast. It's as simple as that. It's the format of a usual breakfast networking meeting. And I've done that, and I've done that for a long time. And back in the days when we can shake hands, get, how are you? Yeah, I'm great, thanks. How are you? And I wasn't. I was really struggling. But you don't say that, especially being a 20-odd stone, 6'4" guy. Didn't say that at all 7 years ago. And I got into the car afterwards, and I just basically just shut down. For me, breakdown was not an angry pursuit. It was like a machine shutting down. To cut off feeling bad about stuff or cut off feeling good by default. You can't have one without the other. The worst thing was feeling numb. The worst thing was living under the haze of that. The frustration that I didn't think my conditions, my conditioning was ever going to change. Because interestingly, the environment I had then is the same environment as now. The only thing that was out of place was me. And I think that's a really good lesson in that for all of us. And sometimes we can be exactly where we should be. We just may not feel that at the time. And that was how it felt. And like I said, it's not an angry pursuit. It wasn't something that for 2 or 3 hours I just basically just cried and sobbed, and I just sat in the car and I just lost hope or the hope of something better. And actually that's the thing that really does drive us all. And for the Harry Potter fans in the room, it was like the boggart in the cupboard. Actually, what would it look like if I started to let my stuff out? And without getting too dark about this, it was either going to consume me or I had to let it out. And that's the route I decided to go. 2 weeks later, I showed up at the same meeting and I spoke about what had happened. And for the first time, I'd shared truly about my experiences. It's a bloody awful talk. I was shaking and crying, but actually 100% it was going to be like death by police, blaze of glory, mic drop moment where I was going to say my bit and then go. That was kind of how I saw it going, but 100% it went the other way. Everybody in that room queued up to give me their support, literally every single person. If you're not showing the world your true self, then how do you expect the world to engage with you? And the second thing, that everyone in that room gave me a hug. I love hugs. I miss hugs. And the third thing, and the thing that changed my life forever, was suddenly it wasn't about me anymore. And again, what they don't say about things like mental health and mental illness, for sure, it becomes all-consuming. It's a very selfish pursuit, not intentionally, but it is. It defines us. Our story owns us. We don't own our story. And there's a real fine line between those two things, but a huge world of difference in between. So for me, sharing my story not only did all of those things, but everybody started to share back. People that I've known for years, through brutal honesty, and found that the truth was completely liberating. People that I considered friends and I was really close to started sharing about grief and loss and abuse and PTSD and all this crap we carry around with us we just don't talk about. And they felt better for being able to share that in somebody that they felt trust with, because I'd given something of me in return. What it taught me very, very early on was that essentially in life, people just want to be heard and they want to be understood. And if you can fulfill those two things to anybody, they will find their own way forward if they genuinely feel those things have been met. So our responsibility, and it's a real human flaw, that we feel the need to fix people, and we don't. Unless you're a medical professional, they're not coming to you to be fixed. They're coming to you to be heard. It's as simple as that. So our responsibility as it stands, I think, is to get very good at active signposting, knowing how to help people without taking on the burden and responsibility yourself. And I'll come on to that shortly. So for me, that's where it all started. And I started to speak more and more. It was cheap therapy. Literally, it's 15 quid including breakfast. It was cheap therapy. And I started to speak more and more, share more and more, and started to build a real following, a real tribe around that. And then start of last year, I built the business, Forging People. Now, Forging People, the reason I mention that is because it came from a line in my talk, that in life we either let our adversities and our challenges, of which we've all had them, you've at least survived them because you're here, but most of us have thrived through them. We either let that, we choose for that to forge something powerful, to forge something beautiful that didn't exist without you going through your stuff in the first place. And for me, that's where the true synchronicity of the world kicks in, is that we can take our biggest adversity and use the same energy, harness the same power to create something absolutely special that wouldn't have existed without you going through your experiences in the first place. And not only that, but you'll save other people from reaching those experiences right at the beginning. And I love that. It's become a real passion project for me. How I fell into the call center world, the contact center world, I started to work with just one or two companies. And basically, like I said, I wasn't providing, and I don't provide a solution. You'll hear from solution providers after me. But what I do is increase engagement. You can have as many mental health initiatives, as many well-being classes, as many employee assistance programs, and as much counseling as you can. But unless you get the engagement, absolutely nothing changes. So for me, not exclusively men, but especially with men, having that kind of buffer of me being in between, generating these conversations. Some of the things I do, I set aside a whole day of my time for people to book slots with me from a call center team just to have a chat. And they'll tell things to me they won't even tell to their GP, because it's about trust and rapport. And then what I do with that then is to help them find their way forward. But I'm not the solution. So actually, if we see it for what it is, it's an engagement piece. By coming in to speak, by coming in to have just conversations, for me, it's a really, really powerful way of switching people onto the Eileens and the Sunnies of this world. And that's what I like. And it actually means that I live through collaboration, which is amazing as a thing, rather than competition. So I want to wrap up just with this very quickly, is that I'm not a details guy. I'll be the first to admit that. So for me, I think the best things we can do right now are to keep it simple. Understand that there's no one fix-all, and actually that people could be operating from a position of fear right now. So have those human conversations. Don't try and generalize how a whole team could be managed. there's a real problem right now, especially in your industry, that who looks after the people that looks after people. The reason why people become a mental health first aider, the reason why people become a line manager, a team manager, or even an employer is because they've either had negative experiences of mental health before, or bad experiences of bad people management, or because they have a genuine passion to help people. And that's an amazing, amazing asset. The downside of those things are that you are naturally more empathic and more highly sensitive to the things that people share with you. So you could actually find out that you're taking on the burden of everybody else, as well as your own stuff as well. And that's what I think where we should be looking right now, is helping the whole organization through culture right throughout and increasing those normal conversations. And if there's somebody that you're really struggling to reach, just try vulnerability. When you practice vulnerability on a daily basis, you become bulletproof. No one has anything on you. Everything's out there. And if you want to engage somebody in a conversation by giving a little bit of you, they'll give a little bit back. And I'm going to leave it there. So thank you very much for listening to me. Cheers, guys.
Awesome. That was a great quick 50 minutes. And again, I'm sure we could talk for hours on this topic, and we probably will at some point in some sort of round table. But I think there was the key takeaway for me from that, Nick, is who looks after the people that look after people. And that's the biggest thing. And I know as a people leader, as a frontline manager that's done those roles, I've had people in rooms when kind of you're delivering outcomes around performance management or disciplinaries or just generally in life where they're really struggling, and kind of I've had people sit in front of me say that they're going to, if you terminate them, they're going to go and jump off a bridge. It's who then looks after that person that has to have that conversation. So some really interesting points there. And I think it'll tie very nicely into some of the stuff that Eileen is probably going to lead on. But if anybody's got any questions or any comments about anything that Nick's talked about, please feel free to drop them in the chat. Nick is available for kind of services, works with contact centers, as he said. So if you want to kind of take this any further, please encourage you to have one-to-ones outside of this session just to see how Nick can support, and any of the other speakers, to be fair. So Eileen, without further ado, I will hand over to yourself. I'll let you share the screen.
Awesome. Has that worked?
It certainly has.
Let me get rid of all the can you see all my faces? Mind if I do that? That'll help. There we go. Right, brilliant. Thank you. And thank you, Nick. I love that. So many things that you said really resonate with me in terms of my experience of working with clients in companies. So I spent 20 years in the corporate sector working in corporate responsibility and sustainability, latterly as a director of a global FTSE. So I have some experience of contact centres, most notably earlier in my career with Virgin Mobile. So I was in the call centres in South Africa, New York, and in the UK. So some idea of what they looked like, but it's probably a little bit outdated now, if I'm honest. I developed my business. I founded my business just over a year ago, Ripple & Co. And for me, the ultimate corporate responsibility is looking after your people. And people, companies say that their greatest asset is their people. It's also the most expensive. So the whole point of Ripple is to try to realize the true potential and the true value of that human capital. And as we go, we'll also make people feel an awful lot better too, and support them when needed. And reflecting back on something that Nick said, I just want you to have a quick look at, if I can get my slides to move. Come on, slides. There we go. The mask, hang on 1 second. The mask that we wear. So, a little bit of a jest as I put this up, but actually the point is most of us hide how we're feeling. Because if we were to tell people how we're feeling or show how we feel, it makes us vulnerable. Whereas actually, I think the bravest thing you can possibly do, and I applaud Nick for this, is actually to admit that sometimes you're not okay. Because let's face it, most of us at some point are not going to be okay. And just to emphasize that with some statistics, I always take an evidence-informed approach. Here is some evidence that was brought out in January, pre-COVID, around the cost of mental ill health or poor mental health to employers. So this isn't nationally, this is just to employers, not to UKPL, not to the NHS, etc. It's up to 42 to 45 billion pounds a year. And the massive lion's share of that is presenteeism, which is turning up for work, not feeling well, not doing very much. And that is a real drain on a company's HR cost. And actually, sick absence is reducing and presenteeism is increasing. So we have a bit of an issue there that we need to tackle, because already 43% of all absence is due to mental ill health and stress. That's the absence. The cost of presenteeism is actually 3 times higher than that. So that's pre-COVID. What's happened since COVID? Well, I've drawn on statistics from the Office of National Statistics, which is the UK's largest independent producer of official statistics, and it's the one that we rely on as a nation. So they do an annual survey of wellbeing. They measure that through four different measures. During the pandemic, during the lockdown, they've actually been surveying on a weekly basis, and this is basically what they found out, and it's, as you would expect, not good news. So over the 4 measures, which are life satisfaction, how much you feel things are worthwhile, that you've got a purpose in your life, your level of happiness, and your levels of anxiety. And I think it's probably no surprise to see that there was a significant dip in happiness and life satisfaction and a rise in anxiety levels. So this graph is showing us the equivalent of 19 million adults reported a higher level of anxiety. That is a very sharp elevation. So between the 20th and the 30th of March, almost half of people reported high anxiety. The average score on that anxiety was 5.2 out of 10. It's normally only 3. So it was 3 in the last quarter of 2019. And nearly half of adults have said that the pandemic has affected their well-being. So what some experts are saying is that we will very likely have, following on the heels of the pandemic, the physical health pandemic, we'll actually have a mental health pandemic. And of course, as employers, we need to follow this. What I want to show you is a piece, results from a piece of research that was done by Jan de Neve at the Oxford Research Centre. So this is the business case for investing in wellbeing. And the great thing about this particular case is it was done in a call centre, in a contact centre, in BT contact centres. The survey sample was 1.8 million. And if you know anything about research, you know that's a pretty decent sized sample. So we can really know that the results of this are going to be robust. And what they did over a 6-month period of time is they measured, they rated, employees were asked to rate their happiness. And they did that on a weekly basis using 5 emoji buttons. So it was from very sad to very happy. At the same time as this self-reported data, they also collected data on attendance, call to sale conversion, customer satisfaction, and schedule hours and scheduled breaks. The result was this, an uplift, a 13% increase in sales when there's a change between unhappy and happy employees. So a significant bottom line impact when your employees are feeling happier. So this really isn't about spending more time at work. This is about working more effectively on the intensive margin by making more calls per hour. It's also about adhering more closely to their workflow schedule and converting sales because they're feeling happier. But what's interesting as well is people feeling happier actually affected complex sales. So the ones that would require a little bit emotional intelligence, because it activated emotional skills, the happier they felt. So that's things like better customer satisfaction and a retention of customers as well. So there is an absolute direct link between well-being and productivity. And then in terms of talent retention, we know from research done in the US that 59% of millennials have left a job because of mental health reasons, and 38% of Gen X have left a role in part due to mental health reasons. So that was a report from last year. So we know this is incredibly important for both attraction, retention, and also for productivity. So to make this a little bit easier, what we can do is bucket all of well-being, not just mental health, but well-being into 5 key areas. So it's a lot broader than just mental health or physical health. It's about how we feel about our work conditions and our financial security, our employment security, which is a big issue right now. 81% of the millions who've been furloughed have a fear of future redundancy. Think about the impact that's having on their anxiety levels. Our environment, both the physical environment, which is obviously going to change as we return to work, but also the cultural environment as well, which is very much determined also by the relationships that you have at work, and also the purpose. Are you engaged? So back to this really, really important topic that Nick brought up. Are we actually engaged in the work that we do? Do we believe in it? So the top two drivers are health and relationships, but really there's very little between all five of them. So they are of all equal importance. And then in terms of how that looks in COVID, the lockdown really, I think, yes, with health, we are talking more about mental health than we are physical health, bar, of course, the obvious of the virus. For security, as I said, I think it's the furloughed members of staff. The environment, you know, how are people working, physically working in their home environment, and what does it look like if you're sharing a desk with those who are homeschooling? Relationships, very key when you're not actually physically present with those who you have good relationships with. And then purpose, to still feel connected with the business. Are you getting that good and regular two-way communication with your senior leaders? Now, I've circled relationships because, yes, they're one of the top two, but they are a significant factor, particularly the relationship that you have with your manager, as you would expect. And this is how we know this. So same guy, Jan Denev, because he is a specialist in this area, he did a survey in 2018, and we can just see pipping the post at 0.28 above interesting job. Interpersonal relationships are a key driver of job satisfaction. So incredibly important. So let's have a look at what that means for the manager then. 70% of our motivation is influenced by our manager, and yet 75 believe that it's actually the most stressful part of their job. And as we always say, we leave a boss, not a job. So true. So what can we do then? So it's really about the management style. QR code here, so you can download a guide to managing remotely. But perhaps as we go into the new normal and continue in lockdown and all the restrictions that brings, is about reviewing what our management style is, or certainly the management style of those in the organisation, because good management practices are absolutely vital. So some research that I've come across, which was done actually within trusts within the NHS, said that when there were good management practices in these trusts were over 3 times more likely to have lower sickness absent rates. They were also 4 times more likely to have satisfied patients. So of course here we can read customers. More than twice as likely to have staff with the highest levels of job satisfaction, and over 3 times more likely to have staff with highest levels of engagement. So well-being is key when it comes to management, people management processes and practices. So it pays to really understand what kind of manager you are, or what kind of managers you have in your business. And that might involve doing some kind of profiling exercise. There's lots of tools out there. I use See Me. Helps you understand the impact that managers and leaders' behaviors are having on their employees. And also helps to create a kind of common language as well. So it kind of depersonalizes it, I guess. But it is important to keep it personal between the manager and their team, especially when you haven't got the spontaneity of conversations that you might have when you're passing in the corridor or you go and get a cup of coffee. You know, empathize with some of the challenges that people are going to be facing. Talk about elements of their home life. They're doing their work in their home life potentially. So empathize with that. Turn up the positivity. I think it's very easy, and I've got a couple of clients now who have incredibly open cultures, but with that open culture comes this tendency to natter and chatter, and they bring themselves down into this negative spiral. So really the manager's role is to kind of, you know, bring people back up. What does this mean for us? Convey a sense of calm and perspective to some extent on what is happening. Maybe identify those people who are a bit half glass, half empty glass, and maybe zone in on them and help them so they don't almost niggle away at what could be a positive culture. Help them reframe how they're thinking. And then the purpose, help your team stay connected to the vision and the purpose. So it's perhaps maybe about re-emphasizing some of the priorities that you're working to at the moment to keep them really focused, and celebrating the successes as well. Because I think we can all start to agree now, as the restrictions are lifted, we're still heading back to what is going to be quite a different normal than we were used to, and it's going to be here for quite a while as well. One of the most important aspects of a manager's role is obviously going to be the communication. And this is where I think that the people management really comes to its fore. It's the biggest adaptation that I think managers are having to do now due to restrictions and remote working. So it's really important to consider the different ways or the different reasons you would have communicated as a manager, which you wouldn't necessarily sort of scheduled into one-to-ones and meetings. So, you know, updates, feedback. You may not have called a meeting to have a bit of a check-in with someone, but you do need to do it now because everyone is so dispersed. So it's probably about sitting down and looking at all the things that you would normally communicate about and then scheduling those in. So yeah, we're losing the spontaneity, but at least then you get those opportunities, because let's face it, there is way less face-to-face time because everyone's absorbed with getting on with their jobs and the other distractions at home. People can't ask you for an immediate help or advice, so maybe they don't as a result. You can't anywhere near as much as you used to role model the kind of behaviors that you would like employees to see. So it's like it's looking at all these different barriers and then looking at how you can overcome them by scheduling in, proactively scheduling in time. As well as scheduling in that time, I think it's really important right now to recognise that some people will be struggling and they may not be telling you. So having a regular check-in with people on a one-to-one basis, so they may be able to tell you privately some of the challenges that they're facing, will go a long way to being supportive. So I would encourage that as a key tip. It is about getting the balance right, though. The feedback, the contact, the support, but also their responsibility as well. We can't, you know, be spoon feeding them. There is no reason whatsoever that we can't talk to our furloughed staff as well. That will hopefully prevent this idea of exclusion as well. So keep talking to those who are furloughed. And I wouldn't be evidence informed if I didn't encourage you to measure. Really, really important to have those regular check-ins, possibly with a survey. I've got a 12-question survey. If anyone would like to get their hands on that, let me know. Or almost like an audit with your team, but perhaps an audit on a one-to-one basis as well. And then look to the wider organisation. Are there processes, policies that you can rest on as a sort of a methodology of how to approach this? Are you proactive in how you're telling people about the fact that there are support mechanisms in place? Do you have an employee assistance program? If not, there are free resources that you can find on government websites. One's called Able Futures, a really good resource that is funded by DWP. And very important to also make sure that your senior leaders are towing the line as well. They need to also still be giving those clear and regular communications, and potentially to reduce some of that fear, being really transparent and honest about where the company is. So just sort of starting to wrap up, the middle managers in particular are really, really key, because not only are they very important for the well-being of others, but actually they are very likely to be experiencing a lot of challenges themselves. These two graphs, the one circled, are showing the lower scores when it comes to both mental and physical health. And then if you overlay that with this, which is well-being across the entire lifespan, we can see that the dip in this inverted curve happens around sort of late 40s. If these are your managers, they are very, very vulnerable to mental ill health. So it's about supporting them to help themselves and look after themselves, as well as helping them to look after others and have those empathetic and engaging conversations. So you can do that through wellbeing training, and obviously this is one of the potential solutions. There is very good evidence that wellbeing works across a range of industries. And just a few sort of more bangs for buck in terms of why this is the right route to go down. You've got your best ROI, 10 to 1 on training. This has been brought out by Deloitte in the same survey I mentioned earlier, and brought out in January. You're going to get these as a handout, so I'm not going to go into the detail of them because you can quite clearly read slides yourself. But you've got characteristics of what a successful program is, and you've got the ROIs of the best programs that you can put into place. And certainly training raises awareness, starts to change knowledge, attitude, and then behaviours, and starts to create a more open culture. And just so you know, that there is also a bit of information in my handout with regards to actually your duty of care. It is part of the Health and Safety Act, the psychological safety of employees, but also we're getting onto reporting requirements as well. So from the 1st of January, depending on the size and turnover of the business, you are required to write an employee engagement statement, so worth considering. Finally, you are not going to be on your own. It is becoming the norm to do this. 68% of people have a defined wellbeing strategy. They're increasing their spend on wellbeing. I think that is only going to continue post-COVID. Boards are very supportive of this agenda, and it is of a grave concern to boards because of the lack of productivity as a result of mental ill health. If you would like to download a free ebook, which is about your individual wellbeing, then there's a QR code there as well as a link as well. So feel free. I hope that was useful.
Very useful. The chat was alive with feedback there, Eileen, and I've captured everybody that has asked for a copy of your 12-point guide, so I can share that with you at the same time. We had a question from Sandra, and it was, what are your top 3 things that people should consider changing?
I love the fact that you haven't asked me for one, because there's no silver bullet. The first thing I would do is recognise that your workforce will not be a homogenous blob. So you need to do a little bit of an audit, and that 12-question snapshot questionnaire will give you the average, but will also give you the highs and the lows of where those real vulnerabilities are. Do an audit, and the more often the better, perhaps as people are returning. Secondly, get your leaders to role model this, and if your leaders are not on board, you need to sort of sort that one out. So that is sometimes with clients, I have to work with the leadership team before I can do anything else, because the leaders are creating a bullying culture, for example. And then thirdly, support your managers, inform them about well-being. They are critical to the culture and supporting employees, but look after them as well, because they are the most vulnerable in your organization, likely.
Brilliant. Really good points, Elaine. And a few people have asked in the chat, are we able to share the slides afterwards? So there's some big nods there from Eileen, so we'll be able to get some of this data with you. And I've got email addresses, so I can forward this on after everybody. So if you've not submitted your email, just drop it into the chat or drop it to me personally, and I'll make sure that it comes to you. But really insightful, that lots of great data there. And I think there's some really good stuff for people to inform how they change and how they approach some of those conversations. So really, really useful. It wouldn't be a complete session without talking about how we can fire people up, though, and really engage our workforce, because we've seen the stats and the damage of what a disengaged workforce can do and how to kind of handle some of that. So Sunny, I'm going to come to you to round off today's session with your amazing job, Fun at Work. So take it away, introduce yourself, and take the floor. It's yours.
Thank you. I mean, firstly, thank you to Nick and to Eileen as well. I've never had such a build-up to me speaking, and you know, everything that you said, completely back it 100%. So big thumbs up. So just to give you, I'm going to give you a brief insight and share with you how fun can work for you. It can seriously help with mental health and well-being. And the bonus is it also helps with the company as well, with the business, which has been spoken about previously. I'll also tell you about where fun can go wrong in organisations. And then to finish off, I'll give you some practical tips on what you can do to help keep your teams engaged, both at home or as we start to return to work as well. But firstly, just give you a bit of background about me. And where I come from on this subject. So I lead a group of companies called the Fun Experts, and that includes Sunshine Events, Fun Depot and Fun at Work. Now, we're in the serious business of providing fun. It's not a fluffy thing. It's not just something that people talk about. There's a real purpose to doing it and to having fun. Within my companies, we're multi-award winning. We've won Employer of the Year, Corporate Social Responsibility, and we've won Customer Service of the Year as well several times. And there's a reason for that, and obviously I will get to that. Now, we deliver fun solutions to companies, and we have been doing since 2003. So I guess you could say that we do know the subject very well, and we know what we're talking about. Now, a few years ago, within our company, we started to acknowledge the fact that we were winning awards and we were doing something different to everybody else. And people started to ask, you know, what is it? What's your secret? They were saying to us, we've got problems with our attrition rates, we've got problems with sickness, we've got problems with recruiting and recruiting staff. Now, we didn't have those problems because we were doing things differently, and we started to look at it and we said, well, you know, our business, yes, we have great graphics on our walls, yes, we have a great office environment, but actually the thing that we were doing different to everybody else is that we were having structured, purposeful fun within our company. And back to what Aileen said before, is that fun was led from the management down. So it was something that was ingrained in me. It was why I set the company up, is that I wanted to have an environment where people wanted to come to work. And that is something that has stayed with us right throughout the process of being in business. And we realised that was the differentiator between us and other organisations. And the reason that fun worked for us is, I mean, we say it's 3.5 principles. Happy staff provide better customer service, and that's evident in the awards that we win. And we've got one of the highest NPS rates in our industry. We're 87%, which is higher than world class. And the second reason is that, as Steve Jobs says, great things in business are never done by one person. They're done by teams. And because of our environment, because of our culture, we'd created a really incredibly strong team that was working together. And number 3 is that teams that play together stay together and they perform better. And the little point 5 is a Gallup stat, and the stats don't lie. And Eileen had some fantastic stats there as well. But businesses that take proactive steps to better engage their teams outperform the competitors that don't, because they look after their people. So we've acknowledged that there are actually 3 types of fun that an organisation can have. And some of these may resonate with you as I go through them. So the first one is forced fun, where people are forced to take part in activities. They're forced to go on social events, and it becomes really hard work to organise it because people see it as work and not time with their colleagues. The second one is token gesture fun. And this is one where the company wants to be seen to be having fun. So it's a tick box exercise. And it can be anything from Pizza Friday, or, you know, dressing up on a Monday, and actually there's no real structure to it and no real purpose, and it's a one-off tick box exercise. And what it can actually do is have a negative effect on the company, whereas fun has so much potential to have a positive effect as it has on my business. So there's forced fun, token gesture fun, and there's the fun that we have, which is purposeful, structured fun. And that's continual fun. So it's not a one-off token gesture, it's continuous, whether that be weekly, monthly, it carries on, and it's embedded in the company. The management buy in, as I said before, because it's led by me, I believe in it, and therefore that goes down throughout the organisation. And it's embedded in our company, it's in our core values, it's in what we do, what we live, what we breathe, and the customer service that we offer. So I urge you to think about that, because it's quite interesting, because so many companies say to me, well, we have fun, we have a table tennis in the office, but nobody goes on it, or the same people play it again and again, or it gathers dust. But actually what we're doing is we're doing something different. We're having it as a continuous thing, and we're doing it for a purpose. So the purposeful fun is the one that works for the people, because it does help with the mental health and the well-being and the general vibe and the general feeling when they come to work. But also it helps for the business as well, which helps with the finances, helps with productivity. So any fun that any organisation has, I would urge you to measure it against those. Are we just doing it just for a token gesture? Are we forcing it? Or is it natural for the company? Are we embedding it in the company? Because fun's the lubrication that can bring a business together and bring our teams together, and collaborate together. And especially contact centres, where traditionally we have found with Fun at Work, traditionally they are the ones that motivate with chocolate. The amount of contact centres I've been in where there's a big pile of chocolate in the corner, and that works okay. I mean, I for one love chocolate, but it's not a long-term solution.
Sonny, there's been a great question in the chat that I think is just really relevant at this point for you. It's come from Simon. And it was, have you ever come across a team where negativity has been so heavily embedded into its culture over the years that your impact has been limited compared to what you would have hoped to achieve?
No, we haven't. But what we have realised is sometimes with negativity, so one organisation that springs to mind, so with Fun at Work, we bring equipment every month. We bring a different piece of equipment. One organisation that we went into, large contact centre, there was negativity. People are going to waste time. People are here to work, not play. And what it did, it left us an opportunity to actually prove that this could work. And within 4 months, they are still carrying on. They've stopped because of furlough and everything else, but they will continue. So it means that it's a harder mountain for us to climb, maybe, but it's still possible to turn those people around once that they can see the benefits, once they can actually measure them in the KPIs or the ENPS. You know, once it's shown in engagement surveys and you can actually justify why people should be having fun, then there's not many people that question it, because it's the win-win. And with the current situation, obviously with what's happening with people working from home and people being in the office, there's a real split at the minute. We've adapted our company. We can provide COVID secure fun for in offices for the teams that are there, and we are doing that. But we've also put together some engagement opportunities for the remote staff, the people that are at home. And like Eileen said, you know, these people very much still need engaging. Companies can't switch off from keeping our teams together, and we've put that together. I'm happy to share any of that with anybody and share ideas with anybody.
And that's a great question, because Victoria, literally, she must have read your mind, because as she asked that question, you moved swiftly on to how you support remotely, which is great. Yeah, and there is loads of solutions. I mean, we've done the virtual fun, so it could be quizzes, escape rooms. We've done laughter yoga, which is fantastic, and we've got a whole list of those. Now, I personally, I'm very similar to Nick in the fact that I can't wait to be around people again. I can't wait to actually be in the same room and engage with people and laugh and get that energy from my team. But for the moment, virtual fun is the thing of the moment, and that's, you know, that works great. We've explored some fantastic opportunities there. And as we go back to the office, obviously that'll change. I mean, one of my clients rang me as we went into lockdown, and they said, look, you know, we've had Fun at Work and it's really worked for us, but now everybody's working from home. I've got 700 people working from home. What do I do? How do I keep them engaged? And we've worked with them. We've put together a structured plan for them. So again, it's not sporadic fun. It's purposeful, focused fun. And we've put that together. Sonny, Sarah Morgan had a question around diversity and inclusion, and that's really important in creating that kind of culture, but it can be too centered on drinks. How do you ensure you keep the fun open to all? Absolutely, yeah. Drinking seems to be quite a big one at the moment, where people have drinks on a Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock. For me, that's quite worrying. I don't think it's the best kind of culture to put into organisations. The fun that we provide for our companies is very much any age can play, any ability to can play, something for everybody. Again, you're not forcing it,
There's not going to be one solution that will fit everybody. It's got to be tailored to that company. And, you know, this isn't, having fun isn't the silver bullet that will fix everything in every organisation. But what it does is it's part of the jigsaw puzzle. And it's part of the, like I say, it's like the lubrication that helps the business turn and helps keep things flowing and brings the culture together. And one of the companies that we're working with that asked for help for 700 staff, we've actually just put fun boxes together for her, which she's going to send out to every single member of their team. And that these fun boxes, again, are the management giving permission to play. And in each fun box, there's everything from learning to juggle, learning to balloon model, learning to do the yo-yo. And teams are using these, they're learning this new skill and they're taking them to their meetings, again, bringing that energy and bringing that fun. So again, if anybody wants any help with anything, or they want any more information on fun boxes or any of the services that we can provide, you know, just reach out to me. It doesn't have to be things that I provide, like laughter yoga, I don't provide it. Cheryl is on here from YOLO Wellbeing. Again, another brilliant provider. So we're happy to be the gateway as long as people have
and I think Anthony Heels made a really great point in the chat, is it has to be an adoptive culture. And I think, I mean, Eileen talked about it, Nick talked about it, you've talked about it, is that the culture of the organisation dictates as to whether or not you have fun, whether you have the right kind of mental health and well-being strategies in place, whether you allow people the time to be able to have those conversations just to check out. So I think it's probably that acid test of actually asking yourselves as leaders, what's the culture that we've got in our business, and how, and if we don't feel like we've got the right culture, what are we doing to change that, and how can we influence it? And I think some of the stuff that you've talked about, some of the stuff that Eileen's talked about, specifically help you quantify and challenge what that culture is that you've got.
Yeah, 100%. And quite often what you'll find is that HR professionals get it, they understand the importance of it, but it's often the chief exec or the people at the top that don't get it and that think that everybody's got to be like a machine. Like I say, you're here to work, not play, and it's so important to look after everybody's mental health and well-being, especially at the moment, and especially in there's lots of stats out at the moment that, you know, it's certainly the under 25-year-olds that are the ones that are going to really struggle and that are struggling. So, you know, organisations have to do something.
Fantastic. That was a really useful overview, that, Sonny. Thank you very much. I'll just take the last few minutes to wrap up now. So just let me share my screen and share some useful links to some of the stuff that is coming down the line. So we've got the next contact center network coming down the line in, I'll just find the right one. This is me standby, making sure that actually some really useful stats if you want to quickly catch them as you go through. But the next session is happening on the 23rd. You're going to get a feedback survey from this event. Your feedback really does matter, and it kind of helps kind of construct what we're doing here. So if there's anything that you want to see, any changes you want us to make to these events, they're continuing to happen. So we've got July's in the diary for the 23rd, and we've got some really great speakers in that. So we've got Simon Thorpe, who's going to be joining us from Sabio. We've got Venki Krishnaswamy from Cupid, and we've got Adam Frith from Ipsos, and they're all going to be talking about more of the voice of the customer theme with that. But there's also a webinar that's coming out with me and a chap from somebody who's been a guest speaker on here from Get Knowledge, a chap called Lee Horton, and we're going to be delivering a webinar on delivering engaging change. So watch out for the dates for that. There'll be a link in the survey that comes out after this. And then if you want to check out any of the documents, there's a really useful one on here. There's you can scan any of these for access to the contact center health check that I run, that just gives you an indication as to how healthy your contact center is and some of the key metrics. There's another great download from Eileen around a free well-being guide for you as an individual. So how can you individually manage your own well-being? And if you want to join the contact center network revolution, on LinkedIn, there is a QR code that you can access to download any of them. It's me trying to get clever with technology and savvy with technology. You can suddenly understand how I've learned how to use QR codes because they're everywhere. But yeah, for me, it's been a great session. Thank you very much to Eileen. Thank you very much to Sunny. Thank you very much to Nick. And thanks everybody for taking an hour out of your diaries to come and visit. The biggest feedback I get from this is that there's just not enough time to talk about things. But I think if I took up too much of your time, the feedback would be there's too much time. So hopefully an hour, we'll try and keep them to an hour. We'll try and keep them punchy and try and impart as much value as we can in that time. But if you want copies of the slides, stick a 1 in the chat, and I'll go through that and I'll kind of find and reach out to everybody who wants access to the slides. This has been recorded, so it's going to be released on YouTube, onto LinkedIn. If you've liked this session today, please feel free to talk about it, shout about it on LinkedIn or your social media platform of choice, just so more people can hear about it and hear some of the great things that people have got to say and share with this community. But I've really enjoyed the session, so thank you very much from me. It's been awesome. Let's get the obligatory Zoom selfie on the shot. So if you want your camera on and you want to say hello and we want to look good, then switch your camera on now and we'll get the usual group selfie shot. Everybody thumbs up and give us a wave. In 3, 2, 1, look the best you've ever looked. There we go. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gary.
Been great chatting with everybody. Thank you very much. And yeah, until next time.
Thanks, Gary.
Bye.
Thanks, Eileen, Sunny.
Take care, everybody.
Cheers, Sunny.